September 2020. Bet you guys think you're having the war of your lifetime trying to get your freedoms and all of that jazz. Reality is, folks, you lost that a long time ago. Watching that Facebook video of that Australian woman being arrested for incitement regarding the anti-lockdown protests in Australia. Yeah, should have broken the law. A law that was probably written quite a long time ago and used at the at law enforcement and in the courts at their discretion. If you incite other people to break the law, you are considered a criminal in some cases. Probably what's missing, especially on my social media feeds, is people's reactions to the fact that just around the corner, though, we do have further restrictions on our freedoms. We have more problems in the pipeline. Probably the first one I'll mention is the ACT Party of New Zealand have said that they would propose that somebody who is deemed a criminal organisation, they're mentioning it in the guise of drugs, drug trade, gang activity, is if you are caught in such an activity, you can have your personal assets seized. And one specific mention from David Seymour was that if you are found to have an illegal firearm, you can have your assets seized. So if the government decide that your firearm is illegal, which they can copy Australia at any point and deem all military calibers, former military calibers, current or former, illegal, then they're expecting you to hand them into the government. So in Australia they made it illegal to own a 303, 3006, 6.5 to 55. A 223 of course is a military caliber as well. So all of those firearms overnight could be made illegal in New Zealand. We've seen the tip of the iceberg, which what could be our gun confiscations. So if overnight the government decide, no, we're going to make all of these military calibers illegal, and the purpose for that has been mentioned in some circles because that's the cheapest ammunition. That's the ammunition that most people have stockpiled. The ACT Party are saying that you should have your personal assets seized. So if you're a farmer, they decide you got an illegal firearm, just goodbye to your farm. The one that concerned me probably the most, since I'm not anonymous and I'm not that hard to find where I live, if someone slips an illegal firearm into the back of my woodshed and the police go searching, I would lose my assets. Something else I picked up yesterday while Judith Collins was making her final speech, she mentioned Bluetooth identification as being a necessary tool in fighting this pandemic. My thoughts don't really go to this current virus because no one's terribly concerned about that. The majority wouldn't line up and get a chip stuck in their ass for this current pandemic. But what's next? Are we going to see another pandemic that is actually serious and people are going to accept widespread identification? The infrastructure seemed to be pushed through for such identification and surveillance with the installation of 5G in the middle of our lockdowns. I don't think 5G itself is a health issue. I've done a fair bit of time working with radio, etc. But it is a mighty powerful tool if you want China-style surveillance. Instead of having to run coax everywhere, you have a lot of high power cameras that are working in real time, working really, really fast, really, really well. And of course, Toronto was playing with this a couple of years ago. In every sense, if you reacted over the last 12 hours to that Facebook video of that woman being arrested for incitement, you can unbeknowingly break so many laws, you'll have the police knocking on your door pronto. If you're inciting others to break the law, if you are saying that, you know, if someone tried that to my wife, I would do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, you've already broken the law. You could be arrested. If you're a part of a group who, let's take John MacArthur's church, Grace to You in America. If you're a part of a church that says we don't support this particular law, or we don't support this particular type of measures to control said pandemic, you could be classed as a terrorist organisation, and all of the members of that, say, church, be put under surveillance, could be put under lockdown. One that also caught my attention in the middle of the lockdown was New Zealand government passed a law, as far as I'm aware it passed, I couldn't be bothered following up, to be perfectly honest, because I assumed it would be, that if you are in the possession of engineering equipment that could be used to make weapons, you can have your financial assets seized. So if you have a 3D printer or other engineering equipment that could be making weapons, kiss goodbye to your assets, kiss goodbye to your bank accounts, and boom, you are a terrorist organisation. I know there's many people out there who are feeling the courage and feeling a passion to try and fight and push ahead. The reality is most of the laws you're up against were passed years ago, mostly after September 11, and can be used at the discretion of the government as they see fit to protect what they consider to be the public order. We've seen in Canada, Australia and New Zealand a relentless campaign, a steady march towards the types of law, towards the types of the abilities within law enforcement that would give China a hard on. Like in China, to be perfectly honest, you're living under a very strict set of rules, and if you abide by them, you can become quite wealthy, you can do very, very well. It's almost like China has taken a leaf out of Lenin's book, where Lenin goes, well, farmers need incentive to work hard, we're only going to take a third of their produce. It was Stalin who later came along and says, we're going to take the lot. What concerns me the most is in New Zealand in particular, we have a farming community that is perceived as being very wealthy, very greedy, but the greatest campaign against them has been they're dangerous for the future in regard to climate change and the environment. Farmers need regulation. How long is it until certain types of farming or farmers are deemed a threat to the future of human civilization based on the climate change narrative? How long until their assets are seized? Probably not as much a concern as mortgage foreclosures in the near future. At the same time, because of the growing number of people in poverty or dependent on the government in New Zealand, a campaign against the haves by the have-nots with envy politics would gather a hell of a lot of momentum really fast. The trick for everybody is going to be to walk very, very carefully amongst the laws that are in existence, making sure that you don't break any laws that are in the pipeline that could be applied retrospectively. I'm still getting monthly visits or phone calls from the police because somehow I have strong political views. Given that online all I've expressed is political views that would otherwise be libertarian, it certainly seems that they are trying to identify people early and monitor them early in anticipation that later on down the track that someone like me is going to have views and expressions, comments on social media that are going to be deemed as extremist. That someone like me, as time goes on, videos of people being arrested, people's wives getting put in handcuffs, taken out the door when she's pregnant in front of her children, is going to trigger someone like me to say things that I can be arrested for, that I can have my personal assets seized. The difficulty, the thing that I fear the most is that most people haven't studied the laws closely enough to understand where they could go wrong. I've managed to keep my firearms license because I haven't broken any laws. I had a very messy marriage breakup 10 years ago, and that was a very good training ground for me to learn how to hold my tongue, to not make threats against people, to not get angry and say something that would otherwise jeopardize one of my favorite hobbies. I'm not actually a hunter. I actually like shooting paper at very long ranges, is what I really like to do. But anyhow, in light of this Australian arrest of this woman posting material that was inciting people to rebel against law and order, you lot are going to have to be real smart. Even if you're anonymous, or you think you're anonymous, you're going to have to get clued up really, really fast on what not to say on social media. If you have said things on social media and you find a law has been passed that you are now considered to have broken the law, you're going to have to get real clever really fast on how you are going to get around it. Like when I said that there should be a civil war to take care of a bunch of pedophiles in a certain country and that they should be killed, my response to the senior detective who spoke to me was, I'm sorry, it's a habit, it's part of my culture. British people have always said that they're going to hang, kill pedophiles. And I gave her the example that whenever a Roman Catholic priest is found to have fiddled with children, everybody's calling for his death. We need to be very, very careful moving ahead. You aren't a hell of a lot of use to the future generations if you're in prison. Probably the only reason I got away with the accusations that were made against me was, thankfully, the evidence against me had been removed before they could secure it. If somebody had moved a wee bit swiftly on me, I may have been looking at 14 years in jail for what they retrospectively considered objectionable material. On a good note, I've already said this a few times online, the local police that I've been dealing with down here in the south have been absolutely fantastic. They're out there dealing with actual criminals and actual victims in the real world. The police officers who catch up with me regularly seem to enjoy a chat. I've never been asked what political party I support. I've never been asked if I support Donald Trump or any of that crazy nonsense. the police in my area seem to be working hard to maintain a good and healthy society. They're not interested in mucking around as some sort of political enforcer for ideological supremacists in Wellington who want to subjugate everybody else to their ideology. Just be careful who you demonise out there, guys. Be careful what laws you break, because you're going to start breaking some soon enough if you continue to speak out. I don't think arrests like we've seen with that Facebook video are going to be the norm. I think something like that is merely a tool to try and identify at an early stage anybody, perhaps like me, who would speak out strongly against it. And the trick is to not speak out strongly against it. Anybody who knows me knows exactly what I would say about that Facebook video. Anybody who knows me knows exactly what I would do if someone came to arrest a woman in my house for posting something on Facebook. Actually coming out and saying it just gives them something to justify in court their actions against you. The seizure of your assets, the removal of your freedom. Stay smart out there, guys. The financial storm that's coming is more a tool to the Marxists than any sort of political crackdown. You haven't seen anything yet, guys. Hold tight, stay sharp, and watch out for your friends, because it'll be one of your friends who has had enough, has a rant on social media and gets arrested. And we don't need to see that. We need to try and keep people sensible, keep people sharp, and try and keep them out of prison. Because I can assure you that those detention centres they're looking at building on the border for quarantines, they're going to come mighty handy when it comes time to crack down on political dissent. Catch you later, guys.